So thanks everybody so much. Again, my name's Deb. We're at the Massachusetts chapter of the Sierra Club, and we are so very excited to have Kelly Beatty, who's the Massachusetts director for the Dark Sky Institute, here to speak with us this evening. So Kelly, I'm going to turn it over to you.
Ta-da! I think that's it, right?
Yes.
You're all set.
Yay! Okay. All right. So here we go. Sorry for that. So some of you mentioned the islands, and this is an interesting quote that I'd like you to not necessarily memorize, but with lights and ever more lights, who drive the holiness and beauty of night back to the forest and the sea. It could be an anthem for our current everyday existence here, but in fact, this was written almost a century ago by Henry Beston, who was bemoaning the lights even back in 1928 during a year that he spent on one of the islands. So we have a problem, and the problem is light pollution. It's any outdoor illumination artificially created, and there are different flavors of it. It could be glare from a a bright street light. It could be your neighbor's security light shining in your bedroom window, any kind of disturbance. The reality is that a lot of the light that we create at night never touches the ground. It doesn't really accomplish the purpose of lighting things at night. It goes all over the place and up into the sky. And this is a really good case in point. So here's a beautiful decorative fixture. And can you see my cursor here? Okay, so you can see the bulb here. I mean, it's a very pretty thing. Problem is that when you turn it on at night, it looks like what's over here. And this is really horrible because you can see intuitively how much of the light is actually going up into the sky. And we call that uplight. And the useful light is, what's going down on the ground, although this one is so badly designed. I want you to notice the dark shadow directly underneath the light itself. And then there's this sort of slice of the pie that is what we call the glare zone. So the interesting thing is that we're used to seeing pictures of Earth taken from space, and you might think that the worst lights in terms of light pollution are the ones that are sending their light straight up into the sky. That's actually not the case. The worst lights are the ones that go just above horizontal. I live in Chelmsford, which is about 20 miles from downtown Boston, and I know that I can see the lights of Boston at night, but it's also true that the lights, the sky directly over my head are being polluted by light rays coming out from Boston that are just glancing through the atmosphere, a long glancing blow. So that is that's kind of an interesting aside that light pollution, the maps you see of the sky taken from orbit are not necessarily what's going on the ground. I'll get back to that right at the end. So let's take a look at some of the key players. And streetlights are certainly one of the biggest sources of light pollution. And it used to be that all kinds of streetlights looked like this, with this kind of salad bowl hanging from the bottom, and the light bulb was right there. And so the light, that salad bowl is actually kind of a lens that distributes the light over a wide area. Fortunately, we've been moving toward lots more streetlights that have the bulb hidden. And as you can see here, the bottom is flat. So all of the light goes down onto the ground. That's definitely a plus. Now, security lights are another big issue. This is what we call a wall pack. This is sort of public enemy number one, in the sense that it's slapped up on the side of a building. Lots of commercial buildings have these in an attempt to light up their parking lot from the side of their building. And I'm sorry to say, this particular wall pack is on the over the entrance of an Environmental Protection Agency laboratory here in Chelmsford. Not a very good example being set there. And this is what happens when you turn those on. They send light in all directions. It's a horrible way to light up. Now here in Massachusetts, we have this situation where if you're a small business and you want parking lot lights, but you don't want to go to the trouble of installing them yourself, you can request lights like these to be attached to the utility pole outside your business, and you're literally renting a light from whatever your utility is. And they are horrible sources scattered light. They're not very well defined at all. They're not very directional, and they create a lot of street lights. So now that we know, I swear, when you get down to listening to me, you'll know good lights and bad lights, and you'll say, oh yeah, that's a good one. He told me about that. Oh, that one's really bad. And so there are 5 points I want to touch on as to why light pollution is a bad thing. The first, and you think the most obvious, is the loss of the night sky. And some of you are old enough to remember that in August of 2003, we had a huge blackout here in the Northeast. Boston was not affected, but a lot of the places to the northwest of us, like southern Canada, Toronto's completely dark here, Ottawa's completely dark. This is a picture taken from somebody in Toronto, looking toward the beautiful Milky Way when the entire city was blacked out. And all of the lights that you see there in that picture are stars. That is the Milky Way. And then the next night, the lights came back on, and this is what he has to deal with ordinarily. And you can see that the whole sky was just sort of obliterated. It's a very dramatic case of what we have lost in terms of the sky at night. Now, the National Park Service has taken upon itself to start sort of cataloging the quality of the night sky at the various parks, because they see the night environment as almost as important as the daytime environment. So they actually have a team of astronomers that go around. This is Natural Bridges in Utah, and this is an all. Oops, I kind of got ahead of myself here. This round circle is an all sky image, so directly overhead is the middle, and then this is kind of peeled into a all around the horizon view. And there are a couple of little, like the color represents intensity of light. This is the Milky Way here, this arch, and so it's a very beautifully dark spot. Now compare that with this is taken from the Mojave Desert, and that huge red blob on the horizon is Las Vegas, which is about 50 miles away. And so this is a color-coded map of how bad the light pollution is, but they actually do take photos as part of this process. And this is looking in the direction of Las Vegas. And you can see this huge, we call this a light dome, this huge glow along the horizon. But I want to call your attention to this little stripe here. That is not an artifact. That's actually the spotlight going up into the sky from the Luxor Hotel in downtown Las Vegas. Not very nice at all. A little closer to home, the team went up to Acadia. The glow here, this is from, I think this is from the top of Cadillac Mountain, if I'm not mistaken. And the glow is from Bar Harbor. But I want to say that Acadia is actually doing a hugely successful job in trying to rein in its dark, its light pollution, and maybe qualify to become a designated dark sky place, designated by the International Dark Sky Association. In the meantime, a lot of the national parks, Yosemite is one example where they've gone in and replaced all the lighting with dark sky friendly lighting, nocturnally, environmentally friendly lighting. Grand Canyon has also done it recently. And so a lot of these places that have distinguished themselves as being really good stewards of the nighttime environment have been designated what we call dark sky places by the IDA. They're certificated. There's a rigorous screening process. And so this map was a little bit out of date because they're actually, oh no, it is up to date. Up here in Maine, the only one in the Northeast is Katahdin Woods and Waters National Monument up in central Maine, north central Maine. And there are a couple of others. So if you want to go to the really dark places, and they're not necessarily supremely dark, a lot of them are, communities that have taken upon themselves, like Flagstaff is a good case in point. Flagstaff, Arizona has really gone above and beyond to try to control the lighting in its town. I'm going to give you a couple of links to, and I know this is being recorded, so you can always go back and check again, but this is an individual's effort to try to catalog all the places in the US that are true, and in the world actually for that matter, that are truly dark places to visit. And darkskymap.com is the website there. So those are places where you might go stargazing. Here in Massachusetts, there are a few I can recommend at the end if we have time. Now, the second thing is visual impairment. This affects all of us, especially as we get older. And just a little refresher on your physiology of how the eyes work. We have two kinds of sensors in our eyes. The cones is what we use for daytime vision. That's our color vision. And then the rods take over at night. And this curve, this shows here the relative sensitivity. I want you to notice that the rods, which basically are only black and white vision, but they're supremely more sensitive than the cones are. The rods are quite sensitive to blue light, and that will come into play in a little bit. And so we use those rods to see in the dark. It's a combination of our eyes dilating to let in more light, and also there's a kind of chemical reaction that takes place in our eyes to create what's called visual purple, or rhodopsin is the technical name, that actually improves our night vision. Now, whenever you put a bright light source in the way of looking at whatever your surroundings are, the eye reacts by the pupils shrink. They don't dilate anymore, and that rhodopsin gets bleached out. So it's very bad to looking. We all know this from our own experiences. Looking at a bright light at night after we've gotten used to the dark, it screws it up badly. Not only that, it makes it difficult to actually see what's going on. Here's somebody who left their security light out on all night long, thinking that they were doing themselves a favor. But what you don't realize is that there's somebody standing in the middle of that fence opening, which you can only see when you block the light. Let's try that one again. This is what happens to your eyes if there's a bright light source in the way. So that's a sort of human consequence. The environmental consequences, and this is where the work of the Sierra Club is so essential. We all know that there is a whole ecosystem that takes place at night. The nocturnal ecosystem, there are little critters out there that migrate, they mate, they eat, they move around. That's when they're active. And I'll just give you a couple of examples of how light at night affects the nighttime ecosystem. First involves the migration of birds, and here along the East Coast, some of you maybe are birders. We have a major migratory route called the Atlantic Flyway, and songbirds in particular migrate at a maximum of about 300 feet. They're actually covering long distances, but not that high off the ground. And so as long as they're out in the dark, away from the city, they have their visual cues. They've got little magnets in their heads, and they cue on the moon or whatever happens to be in the sky, in the actual night sky, to guide their migration at night. But if you put something like a tall building, 30 stories or taller, in the middle of that, then they become confused, and they actually see that as their guiding source, and so they'll circle around it indefinitely until they fall from the sky exhausted or dead, and they become easy prey. In the U.S. alone, tens of millions of birds are killed every year during migration season because they are trapped around these buildings, or they run into the buildings and they fall to the ground. Something not so much around here, but down on the Gulf Coast especially, sea turtle hatchlings are exquisitely sensitive to light. Once they hatch and get out of their shells, they got to make a beeline for the ocean, and they look for reflections off the water to draw them into the sea. The problem is, if you have a resort or some kind of distracting light, they will go toward that instead. It doesn't always end well for the hatchlings if they have to cross a road, for example. All right, so now I'm going to talk about human consequences, particularly. This is an area of emerging research, and it goes something like this. You've all heard of melatonin, and melatonin is a compound created in the pineal gland in our brain. And it comes out, it's produced at night when we're asleep, but also when it's dark. You don't need to be asleep for your brain to create melatonin. And so it turns out that our eyes have a little receptor that connects to the pineal gland and says, it's dark, make melatonin. And so during the daytime, this is a plot that crudely kind of shows how much melatonin is in our bloodstream. During the day, it's very little. At night, it spikes really high unless you make a run to the fridge for a snack late at night, or you go to your bathroom and flip on the light. And then it's bad, because now all that melatonin production crashes and you have to start all over again. So light at night is very bad for our circadian system. And in fact, back in the 1980s, Richard Stevens, who unfortunately died just a couple of years ago, one of the epidemiologists who studied this, realized that there must be a connection between disruption of the circadian system due to light at night and our susceptibility to certain kinds of cancers, breast cancer in women, prostate cancer in men. And in fact, if you're a night shift worker, or if you're a nurse at a, you're working in a hospital all night, you have a higher risk of cancer because your circadian system is all messed up. You don't have the melatonin in your system that you should have, and so you're more susceptible. This is just a simple graph that shows in mice, laboratory mice who are kept in constant daylight. That's the curve over here on the far left with the round dots, and in constant darkness over here on the far right, when they're actually intentionally infected with a cancer tumor, the rate of tumor growth is very rapid when they're exposed to light because they have no melatonin in their system, and it's much, much slower when there's melatonin as a kind of suppressant of the cancer. So this is all coming to fruition in the sense that we're now pretty sure that shift work that disrupts our circadian system is probably carcinogenic to humans. And in fact, the American Medical Association has weighed in on this over the last 10 years, talking about how nighttime lighting can disrupt biologic process. And it's not just that it's causing, cancer, but it can disrupt your circadian system. Now, the last thing, and this is something that we pay particularly close attention to, is the energy waste involved. Here's a typical picture of the Earth at night, taken from satellites. I'm going to zoom in here. This is the U.S., and you can make out a lot of places. Here's the West Coast over here, and here's Florida, and here's Long Island. This is the I-95 corridor. We're up here in the Boston area. You can see some of the Great Lakes outlined. And then what the heck is this up in the Dakotas? That's a real obvious thing. And it turns out those are the fracking fields up in North Dakota that are lit continuously. A lot of it is burning off of methane gas. So there's flares going on all the time. And so this has become one of the hotspots, if you will, for light pollution. I mean, those fracking fields in North Dakota outshine the entire city of Chicago or New York. This is really, really bad. Well, let's keep it to the East Coast here. This is a close-up of a satellite view. And then this is now zooming in a little bit closer. This is actually from the International Space Station. And I want you to notice the sort of filamentary nature of roads leading away from Boston, out here to Worcester and down here. And your first impression might be, well, these have to be the interstates. No, they're not. They're actually the state highways, Route 9 and Route 1 particularly, because these are the places that have all the businesses along them that are on, many of them 24/7. And they have illuminated parking lots and poor quality lighting or a lot of lighting to attract customers. And so those are some of the places that are the most wasteful of energy. And these data are very old at this point. I really need to find an updated source. But we're talking about tens of millions of kilowatts of wasted energy just visible in this image, going up into space and not doing what's intended. And I just want to show you, this is not downtown Boston, fortunately. This is Chicago. Chicago is sort of the poster child for really bad lighting. And that's a story in and of itself. Now I'm going to show you a couple of examples of, well, Kelly, I'm curious to know how bad is the light pollution where I live in Northborough or Waltham or Lexington. And I'm going to give you a couple of tools here. And I'm not picking on anybody who's here. I think this is Sudbury, Massachusetts. And this is a website called lightpollutionmap.info. So if you go to lightpollutionmap.info, you can see, based on the year, how bad the light pollution is where you live. And you can go to anywhere in the world and you can click through different years The Earth is now being photographed all the time at night on a very regular basis because there's a lot of new science that's coming in from light pollution. And not to pick on Sudbury, but now this is a somewhat different URL. This is lighttrends.lightpollutionmap.info. And if you go there, you can actually encircle an area, as I've done here. I've encircled Sudbury, right? And I can plot how light pollution has changed in Sudbury over time. This is a little bit dated. It only goes until 2019, but it was the only one I had for Massachusetts. I give this talk in a lot of different places, but this is one that's kind of close to home. And I am happy to say that the level of light pollution in Sudbury has been going down very gradually over the last decade or so. And you might wonder, what are these spikes? Like, look at these very high points here. I want you to notice that they're all around January of the year. And if there's snow on the ground, the amount of light pollution skyrockets because anything that's shining down on the ground gets reflected up. And that's why those spikes are so strong. All right, I'm going to shift gears now and talk about light emitting diodes, which is, our society is converting to LEDs at an enormously rapid pace. This is a once in a multi-generational change in the way we light up the night. And there's no secret as to why. LEDs are incredibly efficient sources of light. They convert 2 to 3 times more, they get 2 to 3 times more electricity for the same watt. I'm sorry, 2 to 3 times more light for the same watt of electricity as some of these traditional sources do. Plus, they can be controlled, they can be turned on and off, they can be dimmed. There's all kinds of good reasons why LEDs should be used to light. But like that old Clint Eastwood movie, The Good, Bad, and Ugly, they have a downside, which I want to talk about. And I want to introduce you to the concept of color temperature. And that is this: a light source has a temperature associated with it, which is a real temperature. These are what are called black body curves, and this is a little bit better way of explaining it. The higher that temperature, the bluer the light. And this is a scale that runs from 1000 Kelvin, which is the temperature scale, up to 9000. Fortunately for us, there aren't that many 9000 Kelvin light sources in the world, but they exist. Most of what we have is sort of around here, from the 3 to 5000 K region. And the take home here is, the lower the number, the warmer looking the light, and the less blue light it has. From an environmental point of view, from an energy waste point of view, from a circadian disruption point of view, from a sky glow and light pollution and why can't I see more stars point of view, blue light is the bad guy here. Blue light is the culprit. And so when you go to buy a light bulb now, wherever you go, if you look on the side of the package, it actually has a color temperature value. And this happens to be 3000 on this one that I took a photo of. This is now listed on light bulb labels, and you want to go with the warmest color temperature that you can. And this is both for your inside lights and especially your outside lights. I want to get back to this. You saw this before. This is that rods and cones graph. And I want to reiterate that our nighttime vision, our rods, are like really sensitive to blue light, much more so than we are during the daytime. And so when there is blue light in our nighttime environment, we see it, and we see it as being very harsh. And so these LEDs are replacing often an older style of light called high pressure sodium. It's the peachy colored light there's still a lot of them around. And they have you can see the color temperature here is only 2200. They're actually, from an environmental point of view, they're not that bad. They really aren't. And so they're being replaced with LEDs. And I can't stress enough, high color temperature, 5000 Kelvin. Look at this huge blue spike in the spectrum. Even going as low as 3000, there's still some blue, but not nearly as much. And so we want to make sure that the LEDs that we introduce to our environment have as little blue light in them at night as they possibly can, because this is that the dark black line here shows you that spike in the LED spectrum that I just showed you, and the dashed line is your circadian sensitivity. It's that little sensor in your eye that tells the pineal gland to make or not make melatonin. The very spot in the spectrum where LEDs can be most egregious in the blue part of the spectrum are the very location where our eyes are trying to tell us to make or not make melatonin. So streetlights are being rolled out, LED streetlights are being rolled out everywhere. If your town doesn't have them yet, I guarantee you will have them in 2 to 3 years. And probably, if you don't have them yet, there's somebody at your town hall who's working on this problem. And so I know a lot of you want some, some suggestions for how you can make a difference. The first thing I would do is go down to town hall and either ask what the specification is for the LEDs that have already been installed in places like Arlington and probably Waltham, I would imagine. Or if there are LEDs in the offing, what the specifications are, and in particular, what the color temperature is. The American Medical Association, like the IDA, recommends 3,000 Kelvin or lower. And in fact, there's some new guidance on this from the IDA. We're now emphasizing that if possible, get under 2,200, which again is the warmth, the color temperature of those old high pressure sodium bulbs. The blue light just does such a number on our nighttime environment. There's no overstating it. And so I want to make you aware of some of the places that we have seen in the recent past that are doing good things to try to bring up this awareness of light pollution. And some people are getting the message. The principal lighting, the organization of lighting professionals in the United States is called the Illuminating Engineering Society, or IES. And just about a year ago, they have been working with the IDA to come up with sensible lighting for the nighttime environment. And we jointly issued these 5 principles that should guide all of our lighting choices going forward. They should be, first of all, the light should have a purpose. It should be directed where we need it. It should be no brighter than necessary, turned on only when it's useful, and have the lowest color temperature that is reasonably possible. Now, in the time I have left, I want to talk about a couple of things that you, as members of Sierra Club Massachusetts, can be helping with. Deb already mentioned that they've been a great supporter of what we're doing here in Massachusetts. We have statewide legislation right now pending, and these are called the docket numbers. This is legislation for this current session, and we have a couple of basic concepts that we're trying to get past. This would apply to lighting that is state or municipally funded, so that when your town replaces its street lights, that would count. When a business comes up and new business in town, it would not count. So we want them to be fully shielded. We want them to have a color temperature of 3,000 Kelvin or less. We want Massachusetts Department of Transportation to adopt best practices. And Deb, is some of you might be aware that we've partnered in going up against MassDOT on some lighting retrofits, most recently in the Blue Hills area, where they were going to light the whole intersection where I-95 and 24 come together, and that's a very environmentally sensitive area. We want the Department of Public Utilities to provide rates for utilities that are lower wattage than what we have now. Let me give an example. If you as a town did the right thing and installed LED streetlights, and in the residential areas, they probably only use about 10 to 15 watts of electricity per fixture. And that's great. That's obviously saving the town energy, but it's not necessarily saving them money, because The DPU has a series of stepping stones of energy use and how much the utility can charge you based on that threshold. And the lowest one is only 25 watts. So you might be using a 13-watt streetlight, but the DPU is still forcing you to pay for 25 watts. And so we're trying to get that changed. And so what I would encourage all of you to do, if you haven't already, please contact, make a note of these numbers. That just refer to the dark sky bill. Everybody knows it on Beacon Hill as the dark sky bill. And sorry about the phone there. We'll take care of that. Ask your state representatives and senators to co-sponsor, first of all, to support the bill, but also to become a co-sponsor on this bill. Co-sponsors are like the coin of the realm. The more co-sponsors you have on a bill, the better its chances of passage. Thousands of bills get introduced every year in the state legislature that never see the light of day. It's just a dysfunctional system, and we won't get into that. But if you'll make note of this, I would really appreciate your support if you could have your state legislators get behind us. And now here's something that you can do. I'm going to guarantee you that if you go to this website, globeatnight.org, and Deb was asking you when the last time was that you looked at the night sky. Globe at Night is a citizen science project where you, as an individual, you download a set of maps, very simple maps. You go out under a dark sky. You let your eyes get adjusted to the darkness. You look up at a particular area of the sky. You're directed by the map. In this case, this time of year, you're looking at the constellation Leo. You look at Leo and you look at your maps, your printout, and you match where the stars, how many stars are you seeing and how does that compare with what's on the map? Then you go to the Globe at Night website, you log in, you locate yourself on the map where your location is, you note the time, where you're at, the sky conditions, and what number you came up with. There's no telescope involved, no prior experience is necessary. It is a fantastic activity for your whole family, especially in these pandemic controlled times. Just in your backyard, go out right now, no moon in the sky. It's the perfect time to be doing it. Take this basic measurement and make it part of this global database. This is you can see the little dots there. The colors represent how dark or not dark the sky is from these locations. And lighting researchers use this data as the kind of ground truth to match what people are seeing on the ground, us, versus what the satellites are seeing from orbit. So it really is valuable. Globeatnight.org, really spread the word. This, Deb, I think this could be a fantastic chapter-wide activity for you because you have people located throughout the state, and this is something really, really easy to do. And you mentioned right at the beginning, we happen to be in the middle of something called International Dark Sky Week. This is something that was created in 2003 by a high school student named Jennifer Barlow in Virginia. She was saddened that she couldn't see more of the night sky, so she organized locally at her high school. She created this event out of nothing, Dark Sky Week. It's now been embraced by the IDA itself, and it's a global event. It's taking place right now. So if you go to that website, idsw.darksky.org, unfortunately, there are no activities that I'm aware of in Massachusetts. The pandemic has kind of squashed any hope of doing outdoor star parties, at least for a while. But it is a global event. There are some speakers, and you vicariously can tap into some of the things going on elsewhere. And then next year we'll do it up big. So the bottom line here, just to conclude, is it's really kind of simple. You want to light when you need it, where you need it, just how much you need, and nothing else, because everything else is waste. And I want to draw your attention to something that you can go check out. It's an online film called Losing the Dark. It's kind of like I think it's 7-minute long, almost a public service announcement. It's a little video that you can show friends, you can take to your local, select board and show them, that go over in a very short and compressed amount of time a lot of the material that I've been talking about today. And so with that, I'm going to leave that. Deb, I'm not sure how much time we have left for questions. I would love to have hear from the rest of you. I'll give you another couple of seconds to make note of please call me. I mean, like if you're trying to fight a neighbor or a development that's coming in or city hall, please call me. This is what I'm here for. I'm here to sort of be your champion here. But I hope that we've gone a little bit of way toward making all of you dark sky warriors in the fight to save our night skies. And I see. So you can just in chat if you want, or just unmute yourself, whatever you'd like to do.
Well, I have a couple comments. I work at the Smithsonian Astrophysical Observatory.
Okay.
And we did have a presentation about this about 2 years ago. We started a sustainability group and we're kind of running out of steam a little bit. But our Smithsonian head of science and research just unleashed a huge climate statement last week, which was really exciting. So I'm thinking you should be a speaker at our group again. And we have like an office park where our building is pretty low lit at night, but we have Forrester right next to us that looks like Manhattan.
Right.
And like, how do we approach, it's the same owners, of the office park. But I'm thinking like it would be great to, and we had an LED lighting audit done that we haven't gotten the results yet, but I think these are all important things because my husband's always like, oh, I like the really bright daylight bulbs. Don't ever get the warm bulbs. So now I have data to say to him.
Yeah, that's right.
You can, better, right?
You can bludgeon him with the color temperature thing. Those are not doing it.
No, you look better with the warm light. But
that's right.
I'll write you and see if you can join our meetings.
Yeah, Natasha, I would happily do that. And I know exactly where you're talking about. I know that CFA has a few campuses now, and even the old one on Garden Street, the lighting on CFA itself is nothing to write home about.
No, it isn't. And I think we should start there. And we got really this very major statement last week. Yeah. I'll send it to you. And Deb, did I send it to you? I don't think I sent it to you. I was like 4 a.m. I woke up and there was like this huge long statement saying we have to be leaders in climate. We're taking a survey of every climate project that we're working on. We need to really be out there. And it was like, oh, thank God.
That's great.
Awesome.
I'm happy to help.
That's awesome, Natasha. I want to jump in and just say, yeah, in terms of that statistic, Kelly, that you shared about how many kilowatt hours we waste in light, just knowing, it was more power than we're needing to import from Canada, from the mega dams.
Right.
There's so many ways that we can save power here and then not commit environmental injustice out of state.
And I just want to make an important point here that often gets lost. I am not advocating for no light at night. I am advocating the right light at night. And keeping the ground lit and the skies dark. And I think there's a way to do that. There is a happy medium. It can be done.
So I'm seeing that it's 5:56, but I feel bad because if people have questions to ask, I think that we can, if Kelly's willing, like if we go like 5 more minutes,
sure.
Those of you that need to leave at 6, that's great. But I just want to make sure if people have questions, they can ask them.
Yes. Kelly? I'm just wondering, how about indoor lighting? When there's really bright light indoors, how does that affect the night sky? And what can we do to minimize that?
Oh, all right. So really great question. Most homes, not a problem. Hospitals, parking lots, commercial buildings that leave their lights on and the light shines out through the windows, definitely a problem. This is a tough nut to crack because, for example, the commercial buildings, downtown Boston, for example, that's when their cleaning crews come through, usually in the dead of night, and so there's a reason that their lights are left on. But they are those lights are somewhat of a problem, but not nearly at the level that, say, bad streetlights and bad what we call area lighting, lighting at parking lots and building facades and such, is. Where I thought you were going with this is, do what research is showing is that in terms of the circadian disruption, it's not just the light coming in your window, it's what we're doing to ourselves, you know, our devices and watching TV until too late at night, and or checking our email and stuff. All of our devices now are quite blue rich. And as I mentioned, you don't need to be asleep to produce melatonin, but you do need to be in the dark, or at least in a not blue light environment. So I propose that everyone here, after the sun goes down, the only light that we're going to have in our homes will be from candles. Okay, and then we'll sleep much better at night.
This is Paul Dale. If I can just say, my son is an emergency room physician who, on a regular basis, works night shifts. So he seems to be very subject to the circadian rhythm problems and so forth. So if there's any other sort of medical studies that you have that talk to that issue, there's no way around it. That's his work schedule. He has to. I don't know. Do you have anything to say?
Well, yeah.
Be helpful.
So the key there is not. I mean, I don't know how long he's on and then off or anything like that.
He goes on around 10 and he gets off at 7 in the morning.
But all the time, like that's his only.
Oh no, 3 nights a week.
Oh boy, he's got a rough time.
He switches every week from daytime to nighttime.
The only thing I can suggest, Paul, is to make sure that when he is trying to sleep during the daytime, that he is in as dark an environment as possible, and that's not just your normal room shades. Obviously there are light blocking shades that you can buy. They also sell light blocking shades. You wouldn't realize this, but in the grocery store, it's called aluminum foil. It works great. Although if he's got to just switch back and forth,
he sleeps in the dark, as far as I know, but I'll double check with him.
Yeah. Okay.
Anyone else have any questions?
I've got a quick question.
Go ahead, Dan.
And on a high note, Kelly, can you tell us something like either a town or a person besides the dark sky, or maybe darksky.org? Is it something positive that's going well in this area?
Oh, well, let's see. There are dozens of towns throughout the Commonwealth. Arlington, who was it? Somebody here was in Arlington. Was it you, Sarah? Oh, okay, Celia. Yeah. Arlington, for example, at its last town meeting, passed a town meeting warrant to strengthen the existing outdoor lighting bylaw that it has. And so there are ways for towns to combat this. The problem is that you can't usually tackle the existing bad lights. They're kind of grandfathered in. But I do know that the good news is that Massachusetts is leading the country, as near as I can tell, in cities and towns installing LED streetlights that have low color temperatures, 3,000 Kelvin or lower. And unfortunately, Cambridge was not one of them. They went with 4,000 Kelvin, but they were kind of an early adopter. Any town that's considering doing it now is probably going to go with 3,000 Kelvin, but now we can push, the technology is changing so fast. There are now commercially viable 2,200 Kelvin streetlights that, and so I want to do a shout out to those towns, and a couple of them are like Melrose and Salem and Pepperell. A lot of the ones on the North Shore have adopted really good quality LED streetlights. And so I think that is not a bright spot, but that is a positive spot that a lot of towns are sort of taking the message. If you can convince if your town is converting to streetlights, the best thing you can do is convince them to put up some samples of what they're going to install so that the citizens can check it out for themselves. And invariably they will choose the one with the lowest color temperature and the least amount of glare. It's just human nature.
So, Kelly, do you consider the effort to change the lighting at the Route 24, 128 intersection, where DOT was in fact forced to alter their current plan, is the revised plan something that you consider acceptable?
I haven't, well, they did a revision that we also weighed in on, and I haven't heard back from them, but they know that we're engaged on that and they know that we're watching. I haven't, it's a very long cycle time.
It's still in process then.
It's still in process. The one I have my eye on right now is the intersection of 93 and 495 in Andover, where they're going to be there. If you ever drive that route, it's a classic cloverleaf, and there are literally homes right up against the cloverleaf ramps. And they're going to light that area up with some of these, what are called high mast towers, 150, 135 feet tall.
Yeah, that's what they were proposing at the
exactly.
Yeah.
And MassDOT loves them because they're very easy to maintain, but they're horribly wasteful. And so that's another area that I'm engaged in right now.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much. I'm gonna wrap it up just because we're after 6, but thank you so much, Kelly, and everybody else for attending. I know that it was a beautiful early evening, so we appreciate your spending your time in here with us today. And we will edit this recording so that it will start around the time of the presentation, and and people can watch it again or share it with friends. And I'm sure, Kelly, this is not the end of Sierra Club working with you to get this issue awareness of this issue out there. So thanks.
You all should know that your chapter has become our most trusted and strongest supporter here on this dark sky movement. And I'm very, very grateful for all of that.
Thank you.
We love leaving you in the dark.
Yes.
All right, everybody. Well, enjoy the night sky next time that you see it. And I'll see you all hopefully next week at Advocacy Hour. Thank you so
again.
much, Kelly.
All right. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.